Welcome back in to No Cap Space Women's Basketball, ladies and gentlemen. Andrew Hobner with you. It is take two with the dynamic coaching duo of Fairfield University. Carly Thibault-DuDonis, the head coach, and assistant coach Blake-DuDonis. Guys, glad to have you around for a second time intro here. Thank you for weaving through our technical difficulty punches, which also can be translated as Andrew forgetting to hit the record button. So thank you.
That would be called, like some user error. It's fine.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we've all had it, right? So I have to ask, as we start, the recorded portion of this interview, I guess, when you guys first decided that you were going to come to Fairfield together, what was the calculus of a move like this, right? Because I feel like in coaching circles, especially with the way college basketball is kind of going, there's these two choices that you can kind of make. Is you either start at a lower level within a big program and that kind of works its way up, or you find sort of I don't want to say like a stepping stone school, but like a university that is known for being a place that is an incubator of high major coaching talent. You guys kind of pop over to Fairfield, which had a pretty good amount of tradition to it. But why Fairfield? Why was that the choice for the both of you?
We both had our come up in the business in our own ways, and had our own path and our own journey through it. So we did, have the coaching on a big program as someone who's more of in a support staff role, and Coach Blake was a D3 head coach, and we had kind of our different experiences along the way, and we knew eventually we would want to try and coach together, and it had to be the right fit and the right system. We've been very intentional, especially as we've gotten older, of the right people and the right fit, and so Fairfield was a fit for so many reasons. It was not only a place that was clearly investing in basketball and specifically women's basketball with a new arena and facilities and trying to, give me what we needed to hire great staff, which I've been able to do. But they have, you can kind of go down the checklist of great people at the top, people who are aspirational, don't want to just be, ho-hum and major. They want to, push those limits. It's a great academic institution. You can recruit from anywhere in proximity to New York City, and the MAC is a basketball league. And so you want to go somewhere that women's basketball matters. And that was very apparent from the start.
Well, I would like to announce my commitment to Fairfield.
Yeah, come on.
And not to mention we're an hour from New York City and only about 5 minutes from the beach. So that does not hurt.
You guys big beach guys?
Our team is. I like to joke we're the tannest team in America during the summer because we do our workouts in the morning and all of our classes are online during the summer. So they are, changing quick, going down to the beach and doing class from there. So got a good little setup.
That's a challenge for Smesco if I've ever heard one. You
got inspiration, that's for sure.
You got to beat FGCU on the beach and the court, man. Shoot. So I have to ask because, Blake's been known in women's basketball Twitter for years at this point as, as a D3 head coach, as a skills trainer, and someone just kind of that opines on the game here and there. When you guys first met, Carly, did you know that he was somewhat Twitter famous at the time?
I think that grew in the time that we were together, to be honest. Yeah. I think we've been together long enough now. We're not quite there, but close to a decade that we've been around each other. That I think I've been around the growth of the Blake-DuDonis Twitter profile.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
What was yeah, well, I was gonna say, who made the first move first? And I want Blake to answer first.
Yeah. No, it's fine. We when we had met, we were at a recruiting event, and we were coaching the same league. We were both new to the league. So she was at Eastern Michigan, and I was at Buffalo in the other MAC. And as we were leaving the event, it was like, hey, you want to grab a bite real quick before, we both head on our respective ways. And Carly said, no, I don't. So from an inauspicious start, we got there in the long run. But yeah, so. But in all seriousness, that really is how it started. And we started as friends and, through the league, and the league at that time, it was kind of split in divisions. And so we saw each other once that year and that was it. And then we ended up on the opposite side of each other's bracket in the tournament. And so during the conference tournament, we were kind of working on scouts together. Like, hey, you got a play call for this? You got a play call for that? And worked that way. So, but yeah, so first move officially mine. Was officially rejected.
It was.
Carly, not known for her blocking, but she did, swat that one out of bounds. And,
I am known for my directness, though.
So, yeah.
I have to give you a lot of credit because, you know, as guys, usually our first thing is like, oh no, they chased me. So I appreciate the honesty of saying I was the one to go first.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's an example for even your kids. Persistence pays off.
That's right.
It does.
Yes.
And so how does that work? You know, like how did you guys over the course of your early relationship balance that? Because, you know, I say this all the time with people, local TV, which is my full-time gig, like it does operate a lot like coaching, where like you do a couple years in a small town and then maybe you move to a bigger one, or you start in a bigger place in a smaller job and you work your way up. And it can be something that can get pretty lonely. It's something where you don't make a ton of money right out the gate. It's something where you can live in 5 different states in a 6 to 7 year span. And there's just so much movement that you got to love your job, but it's not super conducive, especially in your 20s, to having functional relationships, to be honest. So how did it work for you guys? How'd you manage it?
Yeah, good.
I think early on, I grew up in a coaching family, so it's all I've known. And I don't think I realized until kind of my young adult out of college life that was it any different, that our lifestyle was different, because it's what I knew. And so, early on dating, I was like, why, I didn't realize that this was hard for people. I just go, you're on the move and you go and you do your thing. But it just kind of immediately clicked with us that I didn't have to apologize for leaving the dinner table to take a phone call, or, that I got home at, 9 p.m. at night instead of, I thought I was going to be home at 6. And so you don't have to necessarily explain it. At first I was like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like I do the same thing. So that was such a breath of fresh air, to not have to explain why the job is the way that it is. And that, he was doing the same thing. And so, I also, again, speaking of being direct, I knew I was not someone that was going to, love to do a long distance relationship. So he, sacrificed and made the move to Michigan, and kind of made things work on his end so that we could be in the same geographical area.
Yeah. And then it was, to your point too, it's not like you can just pick places to live. Like, hey, let's both get jobs here. Like that's not
that did not work.
No, and we tried.
Yeah.
But so when Carly got hired at Mississippi State, it was there's another opportunity where it might have been like we got jobs in a very similar area, but then Mississippi State opportunity comes and she was kind of like, I was like, what are you talking about? Like we're going. Like I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And we did. And I made the sacrifice of stepping out of coaching, but also like there's a sacrifice of Carly being made too, of like having not guilt from that, but like there's a balance of like accepting that and working
totally
together. So and then when we moved to Minnesota, we basically were thinking it was going to be kind of the same thing, but we had just done it for 2 years, so we were kind of like, all right, we're making this work. This is good stuff, and she was obviously excelling in her career. And then when we got there after a year, I was able to get my Division III head coaching job, which was unbelievable. It was 40-minute drive from our house. So I mean, it really, the stars kind of aligned in a pretty spectacular way. But go ahead.
I was saying, and in Stark, I mean, we knew kind of in Starkville the coaching opportunities were limited. So we knew that hopefully, and we didn't know when it would happen, and thankfully it happened after a year. But the Twin Cities do have a ton of D3 and opportunities like that Blake was able to make the most of, but between D3 head coach and an AU coach and all that. So we were able to do a lot while we were there.
Yeah, and I do think it was cool. Not to make this the longest answer to a question ever, but I do think that we were able to be in the same business, in the same place for the first time, right? Her at Minnesota, me at River Falls, and coaching with the AAU team, and being able to bounce ideas and kind of work through things in each of our situations together, right? And so she could kind of gather everything and do. And same with me, but it was cool for us to see how the other one operates and thinks, and how would you handle this? How would I handle this? And to see that before coming now to Fairfield and obviously working together, I think that was a cool kind of like a testing zone almost. And I think it kind of solidified for us, like, no, if this ever happens, this is going to work well, because we think about things differently and see it differently.
Yeah, and it's the sacrifice and compromise component is such a big part of it too. Like my wife and I, kind of the same deal, right? Like we both ended up in Sacramento together and then ended up in Denver, and we both kind of, there's a meeting in the middle, especially when it comes to career or, choosing to prioritize ones over the others. How did you guys kind of manage that? Because I would imagine for the both of you, you're so, career driven on a basketball sense that sort of is the thing that takes the precedent there is like, what is this for either of us when it comes to like our basketball aspirations as individuals and as a couple, who kind of took the lead and took point on those conversations?
I don't know that there was probably one over the other taking the lead. I think we both knew, like I joke because I think Blake would have been as good, if not better, head coach than I am because he's much more eloquent,
smart man over there.
Much more outgoing, much more comfortable in the spotlight. And that's not necessarily where I'm super comfortable. So I always joke like he would have been much more comfortable in that role. But we both knew just kind of with the nature of the business and being, a former Division I player and kind of where I'd been, that if we were to work together, it was going to be with me as a head coach and him as an assistant. And we've asked a lot of different people because we're not the first and we won't be the last. That's starting to become a more and more common thing. So I wouldn't say it's kind of one-sided of who's leading the charge, but it's just a lot of, conversation of what that's going to look like because you don't want to, get here to Fairfield and we've never talked about how we manage it and how we go through it day to day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I would just add, while I'm more comfortable with the outgoing and some of that stuff, I think 31-2. I think that speaks to the coach here. So
I was going to say, does that help you guys at Fairfield where you're able to kind of balance the X's and O's and the recruiting out and there's sort of this tag team nature of how you guys operate?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the things that we talked about because I have 3 assistants, and something we talked about in hiring my entire staff because a lot of people are like, how's that going to work? And one of the things that we've always said is like we're going to talk basketball at home. It's not like we're just going to close the door and get in the cars and go home and we don't talk about it at work because it's just kind of what you do. But we don't make decisions without our entire staff because I've got an unbelievable staff. We've got great colleagues, and so. I think there's a great balance between everybody and we've all got our strengths and we've all got areas that we're really good in. And we lean on each other for that. And I'm very fortunate to lean on, 3 amazing assistant coaches, 2 of which have been a head coach and Erica Brown, who's no doubt in my mind going to be a head coach sooner rather than later. And so I think we share that really well and communicate about it. And I think what I love is that, I knew in hiring Blake, that he was going to set the tone for my staff to be able to challenge me and disagree with me in a really healthy way for great dialogue. And not only does that, but I think my entire staff does that. But I think the thing I didn't realize I was going to need as much was him saying like, hey, you handled that absolutely right. Like, don't think twice about it. And being able to give me some confidence that, hey, you did handle that well. You did say that well without me just kind of going into a spiral of like, did I do that right? Did I say that right? So I think that's been equally as important for me too.
The degree of honesty, Blake, I guess that is required, like as husbands, we got to be honest, but like, that's all kind of within like a realm of reason.
For sure.
Where do you strike that balance, as an assistant, but also as a husband too, kind of in that way that Carly mentioned, where you are trying to be validating as a husband and support system, but also realistic as a coworker and coach? And how long did it take to kind of learn to effectively manage that? Or was that inherent with you guys already?
I think it was closer to inherent for sure. I think the most important thing, Carly talks about this a lot with our team. Like we coach our team really hard, right? And she pushes our young women really hard, but they know that it's coming from a place of love because she and we as a staff pour so much into them. So they always know like our hearts, where we're from and everything. And so I would probably say the same thing, right? Where she knows where it's all coming from. And so I don't have to, tiptoe or be like, hey, so let's talk about it. I'm able to be pretty direct and straightforward. And because ultimately, look, we're both, obviously in our relationship, want to have a long, a wonderful marriage, which we just hit 7 years in May, but
nice.
We want to win and we want to be successful. We want to win championships and we want to, be a national program. And so, where my heart's at, so like, I'm going to go and we're going to talk about what we need to talk about. And I'm going to say what I think, at least, my viewpoint or a way to look at it from a different angle. So I think we've really had limited issues in terms
I think we're probably more direct than most because I might say something to him of like, hey, that I wouldn't say to somebody else because it's not that big of a deal, but he's not going to take it personal.
Yeah, that's true. And it's funny because we even talk about with our players and stuff that we'll have recruits on campus and they won't even, it'll take someone saying something to be like, wait, you guys are married? really? Like and our kids know because they've been to our house, and the way we're
Yeah.
but really, like, we're here.
They see the pictures on the walls.
Yeah, I see the pictures, pick up cues, right? But really, like, we're here to do the job. And so one of our kids even joked the other day. She's like, I was leaving to recruit, and Carly kind of gave me a side hug. She's like, "That's the first time I've seen them hug in 2 years." So, we're here to do the job, and the piece of being married is kind of an added bonus of getting to be with your spouse all day. But I'm one of her assistants. So I'm happy to be that and do that to the best of my ability.
So with that in mind, one of the things that I really enjoyed about watching you guys on the court this year is that the system you guys run and just the offense especially is so aesthetically pleasing, man. I mean, it looks like a modern offense, and especially that
practice last week.
I mean, look, I'm going off of the last tournament game I watched, and boy, in that first half, I'm like, holy moly, this is like WNBA ball movement. When it comes to some of those influences and experiences that you got, obviously, Carly, you've got family, and Blake, I know you draw from a lot of different sources of influence as well. Where would you say the biggest influences come from when you are scheming out this team and kind of creating an offense that really looks pretty and kind of flies out at you when it's on screen?
I would be remiss if I didn't, go back to my kind of upbringing with my family of just, I was raised as a shooter. I was raised as someone that could space the floor. My dad has always recruited, scouted, and drafted, offensive skill that is versatile and specifically, he's always loved shooters. And so that's kind of been ingrained in me young. But then in different stops along the way, I've taken different pieces, and a couple that jump out to me, not that I was, any more, any less from others, but Coach Schaefer from a defensive standpoint was an incredible influence on me. And we don't recruit the same type of player to, full out deny and press in the way that they do. In a lot of the ways that they did, we don't have a 6'7" rim protector like they do. But his kind of way he built habits and some of the fundamentals of his defense and how he, wrote practices to reflect those things that were really important in our identity. We've used that and have leaned on that heavily. Offensively, it's funny because I've seen and been around a lot of different people and styles. But it's interesting, when I was at Minnesota, we played against some really difficult mid-major programs like Drake. We played them a couple times, like South Dakota State. And I was around a lot of those. Creighton was nearby, South Dakota when they had their run was nearby. So we got to see a lot of these powerhouse mid-majors. And one of the common themes that I kind of kept picking up was not only identity, but they spaced the floor and pulled people out. And they made it really difficult for great Power 5 teams to make decisions of who you're going to guard and how you're going to guard them. And so we knew going to a mid-major, we wanted to put people in those same positions of how are you going to match up with us? How are we going to have an advantage against a team that might be bigger, faster, stronger? And so those teams, and I'd throw, you mentioned Florida Gulf Coast earlier, like those teams have been huge influences and impacts on how we've kind of built this.
So what were the applications from the lower division of basketball into mid and high majors? What would you say was the biggest one?
Yeah. So the beauty of the Division III league I coached in, the WIAC, is it's one of the 2 best leagues in the country. So there's only 8 teams in there, and routinely we had 4 of them ranked in the top 25. So every night you're playing someone, you're like, come on, like, what are we doing? And, and you look at, especially when we were in Minnesota at that time, Minnesota was the only Division I program in the state. Now St. Thomas is too, but there's a ton of talent in the Twin Cities and Wisconsin area. And if they don't go to some of those, like, they're trickling down, and there's only 1 D2 in Wisconsin. So there's kids playing that I'm like, these are Division I basketball players. And so honestly, like, the ability of 5'10", 5'11" players to go down and post you up and abuse you down low, but then stretch you out when your big's on them and shoot the 3. Like, that was something that was applicable. I grew up as a post. I coached post my whole life. And then I looked around and went, we got to start shooting some 3s. And so we ended up being, we were the 4th most 3s made in WIAC history when I was at River Falls my last year. Like, we started bombs away, and there's obviously a lot of nuance. We weren't just walking up and shooting it. But I think seeing that of, while maybe those players wouldn't be the same ones that we're going to recruit now at Fairfield, it was applicable. It was like, okay, like maybe these guys are 2 inches shorter, right? But their ability to do these things it works. And the AAU team I coached, I won't get into specifics just because of NCAA rules and everything, but I had a lot of kids that played at, you know, this level or higher in bigger conferences. That the same thing, we were basically doing the same thing at a higher level, and it was clicking, and this makes total sense. And so we were all on the same page. And that's the fun thing now, is like the little nuances here and there, the little tinkers that we can continue to make it. But yeah, it was pretty clear from the get-go, like this can work.
I feel like pre-transfer portal, pre-NIL, your guys' 2 individual paths would, from a recruiting standpoint, kind of lead you to different conclusions, right? Like, Blake, yours would be, you know, if I'm an outside looking in, you know, analyst here, like yours would be spotting diamonds in the rough, utilizing smaller division basketball as a means of finding really talented kids and not being kind of like a star hunter in particular in that way. Whereas like Carly, you go to your time in Minnesota, where you were arguably like the ace recruiter and one of the best recruiters in America at the time, you know, knowing how to handle those 5-star talents and beat out other power programs to bring them to where you were. But now I feel like running a college program is more of a running a personnel department. Whereas even though you're MAAC, you still have the ability to star hunt, you know, higher tier kids that want to go down a level, or have the ability to scout lower and pick up. I guess in a way, does both of your differing experiences actually make it easier now, because you have to have a much more holistic approach when it comes to recruiting in the portal in today's world, regardless of what level you're really at?
I mean, that's a very keen observation by you. To be honest, I've never even thought about it that way. You know, I think we have taken those approaches and blended it with our entire staff. Like our recruiting coordinator, Erica Brown, is unbelievable. She's relentless. And so between her relentlessness and, you know, how I've gone about some things at different places and how I've gone through the recruiting process and let my, you know, relationships and personality bleed through, you know, Blake's been able to find some ones, and we've been able to, you know, Eric's been able to find, and we've been able to kind of blend it all together. But I think at the end of the day, what's made it come together is being authentic to our relationship and being very intentional of recruiting to our identity. And so we find people who are, you know, we talk about, you got to be able to shoot the ball. And if not, what else are you elite at? Like, if you aren't able to shoot, what can you bring into how we play that's elite in other ways? And we draw a pretty hard line on that. And we've got players on our team who aren't, you know, knock down 3-point shooters in the same ways that we have others that do, but they, you know, are monsters on the boards. They're unbelievable defenders. You know, we can go down the line. And so we've been pretty bullish about that. And so these guys and my staff do a great job of going out and kind of finding these people. And then we do a ton of homework on cultural fit and, you know, what type of teammate you are and what type of, you know, person you are on and off the court. Do you love the game? And my staff does a great job of filtering these out till we get to this pretty small handful, to be honest, of ones that are fits. And because of, you know, to your point that, you know, we've got unbelievable facilities. We can compete with the Big East and the A10 and some, you know, low level ACCs with our facilities and all of that, that we can go and be really picky. And it's been, excuse me, I have to sneeze. It's been helpful. Go ahead.
Okay.
You're good.
Oh, I got you. I'll take over. Yeah, and the beauty of it too, I think now with the success that we obviously had this past season, is that we're sticking our noses in some recruiting battles that, you know, maybe in the past someone would be like, really, you're going to offer that kid? They've got offers from, you know, these top 25 schools, and we're going, yeah, we're a top 25 school too, you know.
There you go.
And so we're able to get in, and people are aware of obviously our success, and then they start looking around and go, oh wow, you guys have got all these opportunities and, you know, location, all the stuff, like we really do. And we now present another opportunity where maybe a kid doesn't want to go to a school with 40,000 students and get lost. Mm-hmm. Maybe they want to come somewhere where their professor knows them by name and can text them, right? And still perform and be on a national stage, which is what where we're at right now, kind of the opportunity we're presenting.
Yeah, we're very okay being with the, you know, if you're in a list of 10 schools, that we're different than those other 9, because, you know, we might not be the biggest school, we might not, but we provide a very different opportunity. And if it's for you, it's for you.
I was going to imagine that if I'm a recruit, it's probably super intriguing just for you guys based on what you said, like location, facilities. Like you're not a run of the mill MAAC mid major in that way. I mean, do you foresee, and I won't have you speculate out into the future too much, but like, is there some kind of like Gonzaga energy here? Not in the sense of like program sustainability long term, but just sort of the idea that this program in a place that you might not necessarily think is conducive to being a power program just by virtue of its league or where it is, it has all the things that can do that and be that.
We've joked we are trying to be Gonzaga East, because Jesuit school, private school on the East Coast, just not the West Coast. And they're obviously a little bit further down the line with how their men's and women's teams have been over past 20, give or take years. But we don't think that's far-fetched. And it does you have to sustain that for, year after year to get to that point. But the fact that they hosted this year in the first, second rounds is a dream for us. And I don't think that it's, I don't think it's a pipe dream either. I think it's something that with the consistency and the resources and getting the right people, I absolutely think that's a possibility.
Do you guys, how big is the alumni base there? Just like the alumni support that you've seen and received over the course of this year, especially. I mean, Fairfield's a team that's been very good in the past. For people listening, like before Lou Lopez-Seneschal ended up at UConn, she was at Fairfield. But I feel like this was the year you guys kind of broke containment a little bit into the greater college basketball world. Did the donors and the people that are, important and vital to what Fairfield does respond to that?
Yes, absolutely.
Loudly.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, we've had great support. It's actually one of the things that even our academic institution, Take Athletics Out of It, boasts about how the alumni rally around the current students, whether it's helping get them jobs in New York City on Wall Street, whether it's, whatever it is, like the reinvestment and the return on investment for students here because of the alumni base and the networking and the connections that not only do they want to help, but the university does a lot of different things to make sure that those connections are made. So I'll give you an example. They do in our business school, which is like top 25 in the country in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas. I mean, they do Stags on Wall Street. And so they have all these, stags that work on Wall Street, New York City, come back and do like a finance networking night. And they do that in all these different areas. And so we've seen the same that's been consistent into athletics as well. We've had, alumni come from all over, come to practice, come to games, be willing to give back time. We do a kind of a Ballers to Bosses mentoring program with our alums and women in our program. And they've just jumped on the opportunity to connect and give back. And so it's been unbelievable. And I know it's just the start, and it's allowed us to continue to go out and, recruit at a high level, provide, experiences when we're, doing things with our team at a high level, because there's people that are willing to help us.
Stags on Wall Street is hilarious. Like just as an aside, you said Stags on Wall Street, and I was like, there's probably 3 or 4 different definitions of Stags on Wall Street. But it really does bring up a great point here that there is this connection to all of these things that kind of exist outside of basketball as a whole, and it sets up these career aspirations too. For you guys, how I feel like the chase, right? Not to get on like the soapbox here about wanton greed in society, but like it feels as though for coaches and for people in my industry too, like the desire is always, or the expectation is like, go to the biggest place, make the most money, fit be damned. Like if you get yours, it doesn't matter if you're there for 2 years and they can you, like you got yours, you can say you were up there. Whereas it feels like, just kind of based on how you guys are talking about this, like with the amount of moves you guys have made, like do you feel that this is a place that for a fit side of things is a really good place to be, where the basketball and the winning matters and is important, but from a life perspective, it feels like the situation you guys got here is a pretty darn good one?
Yeah. Yes.
Spot on.
Yeah, we've loved it. And again, as I said, as we've gotten older, fit is really important. And we don't do what we do for the money. If we had wanted to and wanted to, we could have done that this off season. And that's not something that we're here to do. We feel like we've got a lot more to do at Fairfield. We want to build this into a powerhouse. It's something that's bigger than just the dollar sign next to it and the, how high can you go? To be honest, we think we could take it pretty high. And so I played at the mid-major level. I was counted out in a lot of different ways. And so the kind of the chip on your shoulder is something that I love. And we've been able to do it our way. There's a level at the Power P4 level now, I guess you would say, that it's become more and more of a business. And yes, it's our jobs and it's our business, but we also still get to be very people oriented and culture oriented and build relationships and take the time in ways that you just don't get that same grace sometimes at the P4 level. I don't know what you add to that.
We believe in what we're selling, and we've got a lot we haven't accomplished yet.
Yeah. How many? I won't ask for specific places, but your names were out there a lot in this past off season. How many phone calls realistically were you fielding, and how real are those conversations? Because like my wife just walked in. We've moved twice together, and like those pieces of where we're gonna go, what we're gonna do. What does the money look like? Like all of these things are like very real conversations that you have to have as a family unit. For you guys, how deep did those conversations ever get to? And was it really as simple as, we love this fit here, this is our place, it feels right for us?
Yeah, there was certainly phone calls, but to be honest, they didn't go very far, if at all, because I knew in my heart, like I signed a contract extension before the season was over for a reason, because I believed in what we were doing and wanted to keep it going and keep the momentum going versus fielding questions of how long you're going to be there to recruit some families, because I believed in what we were doing. And so, to be honest, it wasn't something that we talked about every call that I got to be sure that we were on the same page, because it's not just a me decision. That it's our family and our life, but it was never anything that we really explored, to be honest.
Pretty quick.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
Yeah. So Blake, walk me through the process of impressing Mike and Eric.
Well, quick funny story. When we were first kind of becoming a thing, it was around Final Four time. And it was in Tampa, Florida, and Carly's family was there, and got a chance to meet them, and it was very just kind of hi and everything. And then Carly's mom, Nancy, who's the real head of the entire family, and met her, knows she's the salt of the earth, but she very quickly was, you should have Easter morning breakfast with us. And sure. And so we were in the host hotel, restaurant,
thousands of coaches
having breakfast, thousands of coaches walking around. Hey, Mike, Eric, Carly, Mike, hi.
You're that Twitter guy.
Yeah, it was.
We had not really told anybody.
I believe we call that a hard launch. I believe that's what we call that. And not a soft launch. And yeah, so that was kind of funny because it started from there. But I think I hung with the punches a little bit there. And truly, me and Eric are best of friends now. I mean, we were so similar in personality that we got set in stone pretty quickly. But I think once I made it through awkward Easter breakfast.
That my mom, by the way, brought Easter chocolate to us.
Yeah, little Easter baskets.
Oh, nice.
We did that in front of our entire business and colleagues of thousands. I think we were like, all right, here we are.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess that's about as hard of a launch as you can get. When Gino Oriema walks by the table and you're like, hi there, nice to meet you. But do you ever wonder, Carly? I mean, was the WNBA ever a thing? The I made this joke in my column, and it's all love to Eric. I didn't mean it in a mean way of saying that, like Mike was like Logan Roy, and then Eric was like Kendall in the family business of Washington Mystics Waystar Royco. Where would you have been if you were kind of in there? Like, did coaching at that level with them ever kind of factor into your head, or did you prefer college over pro?
Yeah, I definitely preferred college over pro. I think I'm more wired. I am definitely wired for the college game. I've got, lots of different experience at that, both as a player, different aspects of it. I think my purpose is different in the college game where, at the pros, you're getting adults while you're still, having to mentor and help grow them. But, if you're late for the bus, you find them. If you don't worry about it, you find them. And we are teaching life lessons for a 17, 18-year-old in a very different way than managing, mid 20s to mid 30s. And so I find I get up every day more so for that than the basketball part. The basketball just is a really cool opportunity to connect and grow. So that wasn't really ever something for me. And I know I couldn't have worked with my dad and we would have killed each other. So
what is, I was going to say, what's the split there? Is it the opinionation of it or where would you go there?
We're too similar. We're both stubborn. Yeah. We both have to have the last word with each other. And so, yeah, Eric and my dad were much better. My dad and Eric can work together, and my brother and I can work together. And those are the combos.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So before I let you go, this is a question for each of you. Your favorite, coaching on the road type story, because when you do have a lot of stops, you pick up a lot in your travels, and especially in basketball, there's definitely some weird ones, I would imagine, like the bus breaks down in the middle of nowhere, that kind of stuff. So I'll give one for each of you. Give me your favorite on the road story that you have never told in an interview setting.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That changes my answer.
Good. I'm not here for a rehash, baby. We're doing this one in full.
Do you have one?
I don't know.
You go if you have one.
That's a really good question.
Well, I can tell one from this past year.
Go ahead.
So we were going to St. Peter's, right? Yeah. So we're going to St. Peter's this year. And we've kind of, because we're so close, a lot of our opponents are, day of bus trips because they're an hour to Manhattan and an hour and a half to Marist or whatever. It's not really worth it overnight. You can get them one more day at class. And so St. Peter's and kind of that route, we've done this before when we went and played at Rutgers, when we went and played at Ryder, where you have to go through the city. So for a 7:00 game, you're risking the rush hour. And so we've kind of been like, okay, how do you manage that without potentially being an hour, late to the game or late to the gym? So we've done it a couple times where we go get through the city and then have team meal and then keep going. And we've done it before. We've had different ways we've gone about it. But then, so we did it for the St. Peter's game, and we go and we start to go to get into the restaurant, and the bus, it's like a slant, and the bus tries to go up on the slant and gets completely stuck, halfway into the road, very busy, 2-lane road each way,
oh no,
completely sick. So we all are like, oh, and he can't get up, he can't get down, he has no traction on his wheels. And so our team gets off. I'm like, okay, everybody go eat, go in the restaurant, we'll figure it out. And so they're eating and they're looking out the window, what's going on out there, and they're sitting out there, and an hour, they're trying to put wood blocks.
Me and Eric had
our strength coach trying to push it,
shoving it under the wheel. We're try it now.
They tried everything. And so we, our kids are out there after they eat on their, Snapchats and Instagram, whatever, just posting our bus being stuck on a slant on there. So we're thankfully we're only, I think 30 to 45 minutes out. It wasn't too far. So we were literally about to press confirm for, however many Ubers.
All the Ubers. We had multiple Ubers ready to roll.
Oh my God.
And then they said that there's a large vehicle tow truck 20 minutes away. And so they were able to get it out. And thankfully we had extra time built in, and then, carried on to St. Peter's and won at St. Peter's. So it was definitely, it always keeps you on your toes.
The glamorous life of Division I basketball.
I was going to say, the adversity breeds toughness, but also I could only imagine the fear of your assistant AD or whoever it was handling compliance. That was the idea of having to explain to the AD and compliance office why we ordered 20 Uber X's. To go from point A to point B.
Yeah, that was, thankfully we didn't have to go that route, but we've come close a couple different times.
We were ready.
Yeah.
We're ready.
All right, Blake.
What's your
You've had time to think.
Yeah, I'm good. Well, it's funny because we basically have the same driver for all these trips, and he's awesome. Okay. He loves our team. We love him. he was super stressed on that one. I think there's a couple cigarettes smoked on the outside of the bus. But we were coming back from
by him, to be
by
clear.
him. So cigarettes smoked by him. Yes, to be clear.
Sorry, you're a Zen guy. We know that.
Yes. So we were coming back from Niagara this year. You know, the weather was fine coming out of Niagara, but coming across upstate New York, there's a huge storm swell, which, you know, January, February, just pick a day. But we basically had to keep pulling over every hour to knock off the windshield wipers because so much snow was accumulating on it. And then there's like a sensor on the top of the bus that basically, you know, regulates for like, you know, space between cars, and that's getting covered, and the same.
It's slow because it's snowing.
It's getting worse, and so we keep stopping. Same bus driver, and he's like, so. Side note, I love the cold. I love snow. I love all this stuff. I wear shorts 365 days of the year. So it's snowing, it's 10 degrees. I'm out there wearing shorts. So our bus driver calls me every day. He had crazy man. Hey, there he is, crazy man. Every time we'd stop, he's like, crazy man, let's go. And so we'd walk outside and we'd knock it off. We'd try to clean or whatever. And then it got to the point where the trip was taking, 10, 11, 12 hours. And
should take like 6 or 7.
Yeah, it's like a 6 or 7 hour trip. We're at like hour 11 or 12, and his time is evaporating for being allowed to continue to drive. And we're, you know, and it's 2 in the morning, 2:30, and we're like we're looking. He's like, I've got 30 minutes left. And we're like, the GPS says 42 minutes. Like, we got to get there. We ended up actually having to stop and have an emergency driver come and replace him.
Which took forever.
Because he ran out of minutes. And so we're 20 minutes. It's 3 in the morning. The replacement guy takes forever to find us. He gets on the bus. He can't start the bus.
This guy already left.
The other guy left. So again, we got Ubers up. All right, everyone, we're about to call 10 Ubers.
No Ubers in the middle of the snowstorm.
No.
Because I had to hit confirm and there was nobody.
Yeah, we're just trying to find Ubers. And finally, the guy starts it up again. He's like, oh, it's going. We're like, let's pull off to the side. And Carly goes, we're driving until it stops going.
I was like, no,
we're not stopping.
you keep on going. You keep going.
And we got back to campus at about 3:30 that morning.
No, it was later than that, I think.
It probably was later than that, but we made it. But yes, so.
And then Erica and I, my recruiting coordinator, were up at, we had to be up at 6 a.m. to be on the road by 7 a.m. to go recruiting.
Yep. So we got into a house a little after 4. She was out the door at 6, and those two went recruiting. And that's what we always say: stags are built different. Right?
Seriously, man. Stags can handle the snow in the winter. You guys didn't turn into the Donner Party. That's probably the most impressive thing of all.
We were a little punchy by the end of the day, but we made it.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you enjoyed this, you're going to enjoy a whole lot more at No Cap Space. You can find us at nocapspace.substack.com. You subscribe to the Substack, you get dang near everything: audio, video, print. And of course, follow us on YouTube, on our podcast on Apple and Spotify. Coach Carly, Thibault-DuDonis, and Blake DuDonis of Fairfield University. Guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.